Right. Welcome to Meet the AI Innovator Interview Series with special guest Alex Marroquin. My name's Neil Brown, Executive Director of the AI Leaders Council, and I'm very pleased to introduce you to our AI innovator today. Alex Marroquin is Chief Growth Officer, Chief AI Officer, and Chief Operating Officer, what he references as dual C-suite roles of GRYDD Supply Chain and Logistics Operating System, or OS. GRYDD is based in Miami. And if
Yes, thank you
that's,
for having me, Neil.
yeah, you bet. And if that's not a big enough job, Alex is also co-founder and director of the Institute of Acceleration of Artificial Intelligence, also known as IA² LATAM. Is that correct?
Yes, AI Square.
AI squared. Thank you. Prior roles include CFO and Chief Strategy Officer and AI Director for Medline Industries Latin America, which I know the Medline corporate HQ here in Chicago, and along with a number of other finance executive roles, including Del Monte and other multinationals. So Marroquin serves on numerous boards, including the aforementioned GRYDD and also Atlas, which is AI sales tech, um, Mentium IO, which I believe is fintech, and Cambridge Business Association, and more. And Alex has earned so many certifications and degrees. Harvard Business School for Strategy, M&A, and several others. MIT for Business Innovation and more. Michigan was in there. INCAI is a school Alex attended earlier, business school. Tulane is in there. Just the longest list I may have ever seen, Alex. So quite impressive.
Thank you, my friend. I feel embarrassed of that.
But no, very impressive, and just welcome, and I just look so much forward to you sharing your insights with all that experience. So let's get right to that then, if we could.
Thank you for having me, Neil. Pleased to be here.
You bet. So let's start, Alex, by just sharing a little bit about yourself, your current dual roles, C-suite roles at GRYDD. And then I'd like to hear, I think the audience would like to hear about IA squared.
Yes, absolutely. So after 20 years of an executive type of roles in multinational companies, my job profile turned to go towards gravity to board roles, specifically somehow into the tech world, US tech world. So as a part of this, end up with this amazing company called GRYDD as one of the several roles on boards. My role was design the strategy for the company, and to and that pretty much was it for a year or two. And there was a time where doing that possible or make it happen was necessary. So I took a double role, so to become an executive of that. So I am this COO and Chief AI Officer for GRYDD. The reason why is because a couple of years ago, pretty much a little bit before the momentum that OpenAI became with October 22nd, October 22, releasing ChatGPT, for example, moment, we became aware that, for example, most of our product relies on AI by then. So, for example, machine learning. So, making that pivot to make from GRYDD a total tech-enabled company, it was like an imperative for us. So that was my first job, is to design that strategy. Now is to make it happen. So this is one of the most important things that I do now. The second thing that I do now is that I co-founded after several after a couple of years doing this kind of being involved in the ecosystems of AI and innovation, specifically for mature ecosystems like the one in the US, Silicon Fen also, I became aware that Latin America actually lacks, or there's a big gap in Latin America in order to take advantage of innovation using emerging technologies in order to thrive in terms of economy and social impact. So that's why with Glenn John and me, we co-founded the Institute for AI Acceleration. We call it AI Square here. And the mission of this institute is to bridge that gap. We are a non-profit company. It's dedicated to gather those leaders of companies, those decision makers of companies across Latin America, and guide them and connect them to the mature ecosystem in order to bridge that gap of use cases. So if you see the really lack of the use cases right now is pretty much the difference between a successful company using emerging technologies like AI and the ones who doesn't. So those use cases are being helped or shared by us in the institute. So we became like these connectors of dots for those leaders.
Okay, wow, that's interesting. That kind of ties into our next question, which references your early career in finance. And so when was it that you decided to begin working with AI, and why did you decide to double down on AI? I think you answered part of that, but go ahead and expound on that, please.
Yeah, you're right. So my journey with AI probably started earlier than most. So my foundational training isn't in finance. I do was a CFO. However, my background is robotics specifically.
Oh,
So my specialization was in automata theory back in the early 2000s. So for me, the concept of autonomous agents and intelligent systems weren't necessarily a recent trend. Those were foundationals for me. So the spark wasn't technology itself that brought me to here. So it was a massive gap I saw between that was technically possible and what was being implemented in specifically the boardroom. My career from Nestle to Medline to now GRYDD has been about being the translator, and my passion is decoding complexity into ROI, a market share, competitive advantage. So the spark making AI real and not science fiction is the one who actually pushed me that little bit more in order to become like this kind of profile for my next step on the career.
neat. Well, yeah, I want to circle back on that ROI piece because everyone wants to know what the ROI is, right?
Yes, and that's a big question, and that's probably the difference between the science fiction and the real value of that, specifically
Yeah,
today.
you bet. And I also noticed that you reference AI first. So, what are some of the most meaningful AI impacts that you have witnessed?
So the most meaningful impact is moving our clients, for example, talking about GRYDD, from a state of vulnerability for supply chain, for example, something as important as we became aware after the pandemics, from vulnerability to control and proactivity, optionality, let's say. But we also apply this internally, for example, in the company, as COO and leading the transformation to be an AI first company. And that means we think first in how to solve a problem from the AI perspective, and then we build upon that. And that's a very different approach in how companies behave right now. And you can see it, for example, now in recent companies that probably have a third of the personnel that a regular or a classical company has in order to solve the same problem or generate the same value. So number of people is one of the symptoms, but there is a lot of other things. So being AI first, for example, means that you are constantly looking into unserved solutions or unserved markets or jobs to be done that you just don't think into solve it in a classical way, but in a new way. Let's not call it AI. Let's call it in an innovative way using emerging technologies.
Okay. So yeah, because a lot of the companies that you that you're working for or that you're on the board with are smaller companies versus the multinationals that you were working with. So AI bridges that gap that you don't have all those human resources. So you have to use technology to scale rapidly, I think is one of your other mantras that you're looking for hyper scale, hyper speed and scale, that kind of thing. So
And you know what? That's an advantage now. So being small, there is a famous book called Small Fish. Being, I guess there's a little bit of noise of your writing coming into the
sorry,
background.
I was writing on the computer. Sorry, man.
I'm sorry, but there is a lot of advantage now for small companies, for example, in order to be able to take fast decisions, specifically about investment on AI, because their ability to do it quickly have this price of time to market on serve or serve on serve markets, for example, create new ways to solve all problems with new solutions. So that specifically condition of being small is number one, is what small is an advantage for family owned companies, privately owned companies. And it's the same reason that the big companies are unable to innovate that fast, because the very same thing that make those companies big is the very same thing as Clay Christensen said in Harvard, is the very same thing that hinder their capability in order to innovate. So right now is the world economics is becoming a world of small companies behaving fast and innovative against the big ones.
I agree. And I think I read a stat recently that there is 14 AI startups every day. So that kind of reinforces that.
Absolutely.
And speaking of statistics, an MIT study, a recent MIT study identified 95% of all AI pilots failed. So how should organizations measure AI success? Are there KPIs for AI that you recommend? And I hope you get back to that ROI reference.
Yeah, absolutely. ROI is, for example, from the side of the institute and also from GRYDD, ROI is our mantra. If there is no ROI easily explainable from the buyers or the seller side, it's science fiction. So you pretty much end up with an expensive toy, and this has two specific sides. For example, number one, being hyper aware of what things are happening. For example, a lot of noise in your Instagram feed or your TikTok feed, on your news feed, will make you have this illusion of being aware and being there in terms of, yes, I am innovating. So for example, most of our leaders that we talk in the institute, for example, when we introduce the concept of AI, they say, yeah, I'm aware of it. I do have the ChatGPT version of, I do pay the $20 per month version of ChatGPT, and they somehow say, associate a LLM like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude to use case in AI, and they are so different. So, for example, having help in order to write an email does not make you different from your competitor. That will not have 1 cent of ROI, and that will probably save you a couple of seconds or minutes. And though it's nice, but that will not position yourself into a competitive advantage. But you doing that will create an illusion that you are doing that, and that's pretty dangerous. for example, with GRYDD, having the opportunity to orchestrate a chaotic environment like global supply chain proactively instead of being vulnerable to every single happening that has in every single route, for example, over sea or air, and take advantage of that, and that advantage convert that advantage into P&L savings, a stronger balance sheet, or a better cash flow. That's ROI. And that's a use case. And the difference between the two scenarios is a use case of AI. So, for example, not every AI is generative. So, it's not everything about chatting and having an answer. It's about, for example, learning about the behavior of a route, for example, in terms of bring something from Asia to the Americas, uh, learning what is the possibility of having a delay because there is some weather patterns that can become present in this route and delay your shipment. That will cost you money. That will cost you, for example, having a decision to change the route proactively. Are you leaving money on the table with the Incoterms that you have right now with all your vendors? So having that in mind and using that information in order to make decisions, and those decisions impact your P&L, your customer service, your balance sheet, or your competitive advantage whatsoever. Those are ROI related values that you have to be aware. So for me, that's the answer to the several uh, questions around is AI OpenAI, is AI Claude, is AI Gemini, is not. That's a small part of the big machine of that is of the solution that they can bring.
Yeah, and I'll reinforce a couple of things. I was talking to an AI executive the other day, and she said that the CTO or whoever invested in AI software, so they checked off the box and said we have AI.
Yes. Yeah.
So that doesn't mean that they trained or onboarded staff and really embraced it and are using it for different things. And so that's one aspect. And in a different interview, I was talking to an expert in finance, FP&A technology, and he differentiated between automation and what AI can do. So automation can make manual and repetitive tasks more efficient and maybe make your data flow and get that all straightened up. But it's AI that can give you predictive analysis, that can give you scenario forecasts, can give you notes and messages and allow you to drill even deeper. And automation's not going to do any of that. So.
Absolutely. Let me give you a great example that we have with real value on using AI as an investment. So, for example, we do have in GRYDD this global customer with obviously global presence. So they are so big that they own a shipping company in order to verticalize their way to have their products in every single place on the world they want to have. So they use our platform for AI in different ways. And one of the things we're building, not just for them, but for the rest of our customers, is, for example, is the tariff going to affect your way to do business in the next years? And the tariff just changed, for example, this week. So we're able now, we're building this probably we'll be having a final version. We do have a beta right now live that use digital twins. That is another form of AI that is not generative. It's not machine learning. It's digital twins. It's another way to use AI. It's no automation. Digital twin recreates your routes for 10 years, let's say, and say, okay, this route will behave this way with these variables And your optimal stage, if you want to go to less cost or you want to go to less time, for example, will be this, because I already went into a simulated future for 10 years, and this is the response you have in minutes. So if you don't have, for example, the technology we have right now, we just don't be able to do it whatsoever. So that's one. Number two is, by now, most of our global customers still use Excel spreadsheets in order to know where the things are all over the world. And they have to update those spreadsheets, scrapping the internet, asking, using the phone, asking freight forwarders, 3PLs, or whatever, or WhatsApp messages around where everything is in every single moment. When you have a really multi-million dollar company, that's almost impossible. So you have an army of people doing that, and you will have always an answer for where is my ship, like after you need it, 100% of the time. So now we replace that. We use automation in order to replace that manual task of the people that do it. So the intellect of the people that used to do it is now dedicated to have a thing that we call dynamic supply chain optionality. This I'm quoting Jim Tompkins here, and the thing that we bring with them is now the intellect of the human in the loop. We call it no human in the loop, but expert on the loop, is used to have that really great insight that AI cannot have. So you can have options. So that's value. And that's a really different thing of regular automation. That's a different thing of having like some chat answering you back. It's, it's digital workers doing all the stuff that is repetitive and is not sexy at all. And human work is doing the intellectual work. That's one of the most important things that we bring with GRYDD.
Yeah. Yeah, well spoken. Thank you. Well, let's talk about your crystal ball. What do you predict as the most important opportunities or challenges for AI in business in the next few years? It's moving real fast, right?
I will say that the opportunity is monumental. We are at the dawn of the truly autonomous supply chain. So the opportunity isn't just to make supply chain faster, is to make them intelligent, predictable, dynamic supply chain optionality as I just mentioned. We will move from managing logistics to having agentic AI orchestrators at global scale. So responding to number one, for example, political shifts, weather patterns, before human analysts can actually go through it. That's, in a word, reglobalization in a really fast past. So we're super eager to bring that moment into our customers, and allowing them to be first, to be better, to be bold, having our product.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I was looking at the GRYDD website and supply chain. There's just so many pieces to it. It's so complex, and how do you manage all those pieces? And
It's naturally broken pieces. You
right.
see, they don't talk to each other by design. And
Yes.
in order to elaborate to the previous answer, you mentioned something really important when you when you mentioned something about the leadership. What is the challenge of the leadership? And I will say that the real challenge that I see in the future is not technological. The real challenge is about leadership and governance. So how do boards and executive boards or C-suites adapt to govern this specific new shift in intelligence? So
Yeah.
what decisions they make and how bold they are making that in a very different way that the example you just mentioned is, I already make my investment in AI and check that box. We have also in the institute, we have executives that they want, we have a mandate of the board that we need to implement AI, just like that.
Yeah.
And it's like it's becoming a thing right now to have this urgency. But if you are a leader, if you are a decision maker, you have the obligation to become not an AI expert, but in but your as a business model expert, how your model is behaving now, how is your business, how the way you add value to your shareholders is changing over time. Not the technology, but your business model. You are the owner of that, so you have the responsibility to understand how your next investments for your next spree of investment for the next, let's say, 2 years, it's not even 5, next 2 years will go to enhance that or to create advantages on that business model, or to foresee if that business model is becoming, for example, obsolete. And there is another doors opening on the way. So Nubank, for example, is a great example. So banks were pretty standard by for tens of years, but now Nubank is serving an unserved community that is pretty much tens of millions of persons that weren't be able to have a bank account. So have transactions on e-commerce, for example, they weren't able to do it. Nubank became made available this massive amount of people. GRYDD do the same, for example, for global commerce, for global logistics. So having understanding that business model shift is one of the most important responsibilities that every leader in this 2025 and onwards has to understand, that is their responsibility. It's not an IT kind of thing. It's not a technological thing. It's not someone else's job. It's your job as CEO. It's your job as a board member to make bold decisions on this.
Wow. It's very powerful. Yeah, thank you. And I know you're on a lot of boards and both C-suite and boards at the same time with GRYDD. So you've got that perspective that love hearing. So any parting words of wisdom for us mere mortals navigating this AI revolution, Alex?
For me, many people ask me two questions. Am I going to be replaced? That's question number one.
Yep.
And there's always two answers. The political answer is depends, and the most honest answer will be it is quite probably that you will be replaced, but it's also quite probably that a lot of new types of jobs will be open. As World Economic Forum mentioned in the last study, that the net is that there is more jobs being created around technology, not technology, about what technology brings to the business models, and ESG, for example, that the ones who are being erased. So every clerk, for example, it will be no longer needed uh, for specific manual repetitive tasks, for example. But there will be a lot of demand for another types of work, for example, orchestrating agents. Those agents that replace the clerks, those needs human in the loop. So there's no automation right now that doesn't need not a human, but an expert in the loop. So that expertise needs to be fulfilled. So if you are anxious because of that, that's my advice number two. Learn how to learn continuously. For most of us, I'm Generation X. So for most of us, the game was to study in a part of your life, to get a job, and to be so good in that job to be promoted until you have, for example, you're in your 50s and 60s probably.
Right.
And then you're right. Now you have a dramatically different responsibility. Now you have to become relevant, and not just relevant, but informed, curious, and able to open to learn constantly, because these shifts are going to be like with such a speed that you will become obsolete with the things you learn, for example, in regular uh, type of education, the ones who actually takes 2 years, for example, like masters. Micro learning, for example, now is going to be such an important thing that you need to embrace it as a part of your present professional profile.
Yeah, and there's a lot of news out there now. I think it was just 24 hours ago. The headline was Embrace AI or Get Fired. I don't know if you saw that article. So
Yeah, a lot.
cover story. And then a lot of pundits saying that, entry level jobs might be totally different. The college grad market, at least in the US, is very soft right now. It's hard to get hired. So are those entry level jobs going away? Are they being replaced by AI? That kind of thing. So
I am the ethics committee for international ethics committee for AI, for example, and we are tackling a lot of this thing. So there is one thing that everyone should be aware. So entry level jobs were historically related to clerks,
right.
and clerks are now being replaced with, for example, AI agents. For every 100 people, there is now one AI agent. For example, let's say this imaginary number, and there will be one person orchestrating that. In the other way around is that this shift creates a new paradigm also in the other side of the chain. So experienced workers, so for example, those in senior positions are getting close to zero disruption. Why? There is a theory behind that that says that foundational models, that the ones we do have right now, were trained with existing data, from manuals to textbooks to everything that is available online. So if your job has to do with something that is available online, probably the LLM will be trained on that. However, the skills that the senior people had in order, for example, how to hook a client, how to manage interrelationship, how to influence without authority, those between hard and soft skills that you just have with time and they are not written anywhere, those are obviously not included